We are continuing in today's Mishna Yomi, and today we will be learning Maseches Peah, Perek Beis, second chapter, Mishnayos Beis through Gimel, Mishnayos 2 through 3. So Mishnah Beis, second Mishnah says as follows: Amasayim she'eni chol likatzer ka'achos. So remember again, in the previous Mishnah we discussed the idea that a channel of water has the ability to divide one field into two parts, thereby necessitating each part of the field to have its own Peah taken. Now the Mishnah qualifies this rule a little bit with some of the Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says if you have a channel of water where if you're standing in the middle of it, that ultimately again you are unable, in other words the channel itself is so wide that when standing in the channel, one is not able to go ahead and harvest the crops from either side of the field. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Mafsekes. Rabbi Yehuda says ultimately such a channel creates a divide in the field itself. So an interesting halacha. So remember again, in the previous Mishnah, it sounded like any channel has the ability to divide. Here, Rabbi Yehuda is saying it's got to be wide enough that when you're standing in the middle, you have no ability to harvest or to really access what we'll call harvest either part of the field. So the Gemara over here quotes the idea actually. So the Bartenura points out that the lashon of the Mishnah is borrowed from the Navi Yeshaya, and literally means Chala Arim Asher B'Ma'ader Ya'aderun. Literally means that if the land is divided by hills, that you could only plow with a shovel or with a hoe. So what this is referring to is as follows: if you have a strip of land that is so narrow, and the best way to illustrate this would be a piece of land in between two mountains, and therefore there's an inability to go ahead and bring a plow, right? An oxen-pulled plow through it because it's too narrow. So it's so narrow that the ox can't pull a plow through it. Who knows Saint Peah lakol. Nevertheless, that strip, that uncultivated strip, does not go ahead and create a separation within the one field to make it into two. Now, once again, this is a qualification of something we learned in the previous Mishnah, because in the previous Mishnah we learned that if you have a piece of land in the middle of a field, let's say you have a strip of land in the middle of your field which is uncultivated. So we learned in the previous Mishnah that could divide the one field into two, requiring each half of the field to do its own Peah. Here the Mishnah says that if you have a path that is uncultivated because it's narrow and you can't bring in your oxen with the plow, so that doesn't divide a field into two. Why is that? Because people see the narrowness of it, and they know that the reason why it's uncultivated is because halacha l'maisa, you can't get your oxen in there. But they assume that you'll come back with your tools later on, with your hoe and with your shovel, and you'll just plow it by hand. Because of that, it does not divide the field into two pieces, but rather it's considered to be one cohesive field, and therefore one Peah for all of the fields suffices. Mishnah Gimel, Hakol mafsik lizraim, ve'no mafsik le'ilan ela gader. So remember again, the Mishnah once again qualifies and says all of these discussions that we've been having about things that divide a field into two is all talking about things that you plant, regular types of planting. In the commentary, he writes over here as follows: Hainu shirakim agadar mafsika bein alonos. I'm sorry. So let me say this outside. So the idea over here is that all of these things that divide a field into two is only with things that are planted, regular plantings, different types of vegetation. But here's what's interesting. Now the reason for that is because regular forms of vegetation are often planted close together. So the existence of any one of these separations enumerated in the previous Mishnayos will divide one field into two. However, when you have a field of trees are always planted at a distance from each other. Because remember again, with trees, you have to give room for the roots as well. So if you have a tree and then you have any of these things in between trees, that's not a raya, it's not a proof that it's two fields. Because remember again, it would be natural anyway to plant trees separate and distinct from one another. The only thing that creates a division in a field of trees is a wall, a gader, or a fence. Eno mafsik. Now this is what's interesting. Now Seir Kotesh, he writes in the Be'er, Im anfe ha'ilano shem shnei tzidei hageder muravim zeba zeme alageder. What happens if you have a fence? but the tree branches are intertwined above the fence. The intertwining of the branches essentially negates the presence of the fence. And therefore, again, halacha l'maaseh is considered to be like one field, and therefore one would only be obligated to give one peah on the entire field. All right, shkayach everyone. We will stop here for today. We'll pick up Shem with Mishnayos Dalit and Hey tomorrow. Wishing everyone a wonderful day.